Hi guys, Brook here, coming to you from Wales in the United Kingdom. In this video, I'm going to be touching on a couple of the myths that surround Norse mythology that are actually alluded to in Ragnarok in the new Netflix series Season 2. Now, anybody who may have watched the 10K Run podcast a couple weeks ago, Amos and myself did a discussion about the series, and we basically shared our views on this season 2, and we both quite like it. The depiction of Thor and Loki and the various characters comes across very well. There are a lot of Easter eggs in there. If you're not familiar with the mythology, it's probably going to go amiss. So for that reason, I thought, I'll just point out a couple of the highlights and stories. I'm not going to go into all the legends in great detail. But there are a couple of things that you're seeing in Season 2. Probably should have done this for Season 1. But there are a couple of things you see in Season 2 that are quite cheeky in terms of how they reflect the Norse mythology. Now, to just kind of, sum it up, this is the story of Magna, who plays the Thor character. He's endowed with power and he's on a journey of discovery. Of course, he's got his brother. He meets up with other people who also embody various gods. And they're up against the Jotuns, which are the giants. The company is called Jotun, and the house is Jotunheim, so that's the land of the giants in Norse mythology. So it's a very interesting spin. What they definitely get right is in the mythology, unlike the polished version you see in the Marvel comics, Thor is kind of an idiot. He's kind of a moron. He's the strongest of the Aesir, of the gods. And he just likes to smash things with his hammer. That's kind of his MO. And he's always, defending the gods and stuff like that. And he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. And the series definitely plays that out, that he's a simple guy with a lot of strength and he's trying to figure things out. He's kind of bumbling around and stuff like that. They definitely get that going very well. Now, something that Amos and myself discussed on the show is, yes, the show does have many of what would be considered the woke elements, but it's not in your face. It's not like the end game scene with all the ladies kind of lining up and they're kind of like, hurrah, this is my women's moment. They do it in such a way that is actually kind of in line with the story. So yes, there's gender fluid discussions and lesbian scenes and diversity and all those different types of things, but it's not overt. The best example of this is actually in the character of Loki. The depiction of Loki, and maybe people may not know this in the Norse mythology, Loki is a shapeshifter, right? Something I actually said in the broadcast, which I got wrong. He's not actually Thor's brother. He's actually Odin's brother. So he's kind of like Thor's uncle in a way. But he has the ability to shapeshift. And the whole gender fluid aspect of it is, there's actually a story where one of a traveler came by offering to build a wall around the Osgardr, which is Asgard, the land of the gods. And I believe he asked, and I haven't read this in a while, so if I get this wrong, please fact check me on it. But I believe he was given like a year and a half or so many seasons. He asked for payment if he could pull this act off. The sun, the moon, and the hand of marriage of Freya. And the gods kind of said, well, how could this man possibly pull this off? This is a no dealer. And Loki was the one who convinced them to do it. So this man made one request to accomplish his goal, which was that his horse, Svandelflori, I think, be asked to do the work with him. And the horse was phenomenally strong and able basically to do the work of, I think, like 10 men. And it seemed very likely that he was going to accomplish the task of completing the wall in time that the gods were going to have to pay up. As a result, they went forth and the gods confronted Loki and said, this is kind of your fault. You got to get us out of this. We can't really afford to give this guy everything he wants. And Loki transforms himself into a mare, into a female horse, and kind of, nudges the worker's horse. And eventually Svandelfori runs off and leaves the builder unable to complete the task. And eventually it's discovered that, yes, this builder is actually a Jotun. He's a giant. And, the gods call forth. Thor returns and basically smashes the giant and kills him. And the gods, kind of learned a bit of the technique, were able to finish the wall. 11 months later, Loki returns with an 8-legged horse called Sleipnir. I think that's it. I think that's how it's pronounced. Which Odin, he gives as a gift to Odin as, his warrior horse. And in Norse mythology in the ancient times, having more legs on the horse meant it was faster. So Sleipnir became like the fastest horse in all of the Oscar. But yeah, it's a fascinating story. So I mean, yes, it is very, very becoming that Loki is actually, in a sense, gender fluid in that respect. And they play that into the series, and they do it in a pretty accurate way. Yeah, with that said, Loki's children in the Norse mythology actually go on and they have echoes in the Netflix series. In the series, we have the character of Thor, or Tyr, and he's, supposed to be the bravest and so forth. And his story, well, one of his stories involving one of Loki's children. So Loki had children with the giantess Angrboda, and he had 3 kids. He had Hel, Fenrir, and the Jormungandr. So Hel, of course, goes on to rule the underworld. Fenrir is a wolf, and Jormungandr, or the Midgardr serpent, is basically this giant serpent that surrounds Midgard and keeps the ocean in. So if you see the symbol of the snake biting its own tail, that's a depiction of the serpent. Now, I'll get to that one in a minute, but we'll start with Tyr and Fenrir. The story goes that when Fenrir was born, the gods kind of had this game. Odin was concerned, knowing the prophecy of Ragnarok, trying to, in some ways, prevent it from happening, went about trying to concoct a way to restrain Fenrir. And Fenrir is growing up, and it's kind of a game with the gods where they would chain him up in various chains and stuff like that and see if he can break free. And as he grows bigger and he grows stronger, he just breaks every chain that they can imagine. So eventually the gods go to the dwarves and ask them to build a set of chains that would restrain Fenrir. And because Fenrir can just, break the chains of anything and anything, they made it out of things that don't exist, right? So things like, what was it, like the fish's breath, or the sound of a cat's footstep, or like a woman's beard, and like all of these fictional things. And they cast these chains. And they bring the chains to Fenrir, and he's kind of suspicious because he's looking at it, and he doesn't quite trust the gods at this point. And he says, all right, we'll play the game, but as a guarantee, I want somebody to put their hand in my mouth in case this is a betrayal. He would snap the hand of the person. And Tyr is the one that actually volunteers to put his hand into the mouth of Fenrir. And he's unable to break the chains, and as a result of that, he bites down it and takes Tyr's hand. So that is actually reflected in a way, not exactly like that, but that is a way. Hopefully you guys, if you watch the series, you'll see how that is incorporated. The minute the Tyr is introduced, it's kind of like, oh, well, he's got to lose his hand then. Somehow that's going to happen. And they did it in a way that wasn't great, but I understand the point that they were making. So that was a very interesting hint back to the mythology. One of Loki's other children that is actually depicted in the Netflix series is, of course, the Jormungandr. And this is the Midgard serpent. It's a beast that's so big after consuming the ocean that it encompasses the entire realm of Midgard. And this is actually a very important character if anybody knows the Ragnarok prophecy, because eventually the showdown is between Thor and the Jormungandr. But Thor and the Jormungandr have a very sketchy history that is actually depicted in a number of other stories. I'm not going to go into full detail about them, but there is a story where Thor and a few of the other gods show up at this castle with the giants. And in order to get the hospitality from the king, they need to perform a number of tasks. And one of the tasks that Thor has to complete is the lifting of of a cat that is owned by the king, I think. And it's kind of bragged about like it's such a mundane task that anybody can do it. And Thor, tries with all his might, and I think he's only manages to get like one paw off of the ground in this depiction. He's given a number of other tasks, like he has to drink a drinking horn of mead. and suck it dry, and he's barely able to crack the surface, as well as to wrestle. You know, in his fury, he demands a wrestling match, and they set him against an old woman. And, you know, she's not able to defeat him, but only just manages to get him down on one knee. I think those are the major points. Anyway, later it's discovered that the giant has used very powerful magic and enchantments to hide the true nature of the tasks that were given to Thor. So when lifting the cat, it actually turns out that he was actually attempting to lift the Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent. And the fact that he was able to lift even a paw off the ground was actually depicted that he was actually like lifting this being out of the crevices of the water, a task that is, you know, just nearly impossible. It was also discovered that the drinking horn was in fact attached to the ocean, and Thor nearly drained the ocean. And I think the old woman was actually old age. And the fact that she was only able to wrestle him down to his knees shows, you know, kind of his enduring abilities and so forth. So when Thor discovered he was tricked, that's kind of the beginning of the animosity between the Thor and the Jormungandr. There's another story where very quickly Thor and a giant go out fishing. Long story there, you know, it has to do with a cauldron, and they're trying to brew beer for the gods, and this particular giant has the only cauldron that's big enough. Anyway, long story short, they go out fishing, and because basically Thor devoured all the food in the house, and in the midst of it, while he's fishing, he actually hooks the Jormungandr and starts wheeling the beast up from the ocean floor. And completely undeterred, he's like, you know, today either I die or you die, speaking of the serpent. But the giant that he goes out with is so terrified, he actually cuts the line, and the Jormungandr returns to the bottom of the ocean. And Thor is so enraged, he strikes the giant and leaves him out in the ocean to die. But this is a very pivotal character, especially, I guess, probably in future series, because the Jormungandr and Thor, they square off, and on the death blow that is struck by Thor, he does kill the serpent, but he's poisoned as a result of it. And I think he's only 8 or 9 paces away. He collapses and dies himself. So this is another very important aspect to the Norse mythology that is incorporated into the series. It's done well. I'm sure they're going to expand upon it, of course, in the future. I guess season 3 and 4. I guess when they finally get to Ragnarok. So that's going to be very interesting. So one of the final myths that is kind of incorporated into the TV, the Netflix series, is the Forging of Mjolnir. And again, this involves Loki. Why am I not surprised? Basically, he goes forth and he shaves the head of Thor's wife, Sif, or Sif. And, you know, Thor is outraged, goes and confronts Loki, and basically threatens him, saying that he has to go to the elves and get them to create a golden hair that will grow from the head of his wife. So Loki goes to the sons of Ivaldi. These, I think, are the dark elves, and he puts forth this request, and they go forth and they produced the hair, the golden hair that would grow from Siv's head. They also make Gungnir, which is the spear that is eventually gifted to Odin. In fact, I have a Gungnir pendant with me, and. They also make a ship that will always have the wind to its back, and it could be folded up and fit into somebody's pocket. I believe that's the legend. Somebody fact check me on that. It's been a while since I've read these stories. But then Loki goes across to Brook and Itri, and he basically challenges them and says, well, can you make better gifts for the gods than the sons of Ivaldi? And they agreed to the terms, and they basically said that if they do accomplish making better gifts, they want Loki's head, right? They're gonna take it as payment. And again, Loki, being the trickster that he is, he goes forth to try and sabotage the work that they do. And he transforms himself into a fly, and as the brothers get to work, he tries to bite them and distract them from the work that they're doing. Now they go forth and they start their work, and they produce 3 items, which was the golden boar that comes forth, a ring that will create 8 other rings every night, and 9 is a very big important number in Norse mythology, and of course they create Mjolnir. Now all during these creation processes, Loki as a fly is trying desperately to interfere with their work, and thus far they're completely oblivious to Loki biting on them on the neck and so forth. But when it came to Mjolnir, Loki lands right between the eyes of Brook and bites him so hard that blood actually comes out and like squirts into his eye, and he misjudges the bezels, and the handle of Mjolnir is cut short. And that's a very important point. In fact, that's reflected in the movie, in the TV series. So again, that's part of the legend that goes back and ties into the series. So it's a very interesting nugget that's kind of included. So again, yeah, these are some of the mythologies that are kind of hinted at in this series. It's a lot of fun. If you're familiar with the Norse mythology, it makes it a little more interesting. I'm excited to see where they're going to take this series. It should be, there's a lot more stories that they can pull upon. And yeah, I encourage anybody, go and read these stories or get the audiobooks and stuff. They're very, very interesting stories. It would probably help you have a greater appreciation for the mythology. So guys, that's my video. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. As always, hit the notification button so you'd know when I'm posting new content, as well as when I'm going to be going live on this series. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. Take care.